The silent stranger at table 7th small coffee shop sat quietly on the edge of a busy street in New York City. It was nothing special from the outside. Chipped paint on the door, flickering open sign. But inside it held something different. It held moments, real ones, where people came not for the coffee, but for the quiet. For a break from the world outside, one rainy morning, the bell above the door rang. No one paid attention at first. The usual regulars sipped their drinks, tapped on laptops, or stared out the window. But the woman behind the counter, her name was Lily, noticed him. A man walked in slowly, soaked from the rain but calm, not in a rush. He didn't shake the water off his jacket, didn't say a word. Just walked to table 7 in the corner, the one with the view of the street, and he sat down. Lily blinked twice. Her hands stopped moving for a second. Her breath caught, not because she recognized him right away, but because of something else. Something about the silence that followed him. It wasn't heavy, it wasn't sad, it was peaceful. And strong, she went over with the menu. "What can I get you, sir?" she asked. He looked up and smiled, just a little, no words. Yes. He pointed at the coffee section and nodded once. "Black coffee?" she asked. He nodded again. From that day on, he came every morning at the same time. He sat at table 7, never spoke, never made a fuss, just sipped his coffee, stared out the window, and left a generous tip, always in cash, always folded neatly under the sugar jar. It didn't take long for people to notice. The quiet man became part of the place. Not a mystery, not a story, it's just a presence, steady, respectful. Lily tried not to stare, but each day she noticed more. The way he smiled gently when an old man opened the door. The way he gave his seat to a woman carrying a baby. The way he helped pick up a fallen tray for a nervous new waitress, all without a single word. One morning, a boy ran into the café. He was about 12, panicked, out of breath, his face red and wet from crying. He bumped into table 7 and dropped his school bag. Papers flew everywhere. People turned and stared. The boy froze, embarrassed. But before anyone could move, the silent man at table 7 was already helping him, picking up papers, handing over books, no judgment, just quiet help. He didn't ask what happened, didn't tell the boy to calm down. He just gave him his full attention. When the boy looked into his eyes, something in him softened. He sat down, took a deep breath, and smiled for the first time that day. Lily brought the boy a warm muffin. "On the house," she said. "You're safe here." When the boy left, he turned and waved. "Thank you, mister." The man nodded once. Later that day, Lily asked around. Asked her friend who ran the bookstore next door. Asked the mailman. Even asked the flower lady down the street. "That's Keanu Reeves," the bookstore owner said finally. "Comes here every time he's in town. Never causes a scene. Just shows up." Lily was stunned. The movie star? The one from all the action films? But as she looked toward table 7, where the tip was already tucked under the sugar jar, she didn't see a celebrity. She saw a human being who chose peace in a loud world. A week passed. Then 2, and the routine never broke. Until one day, a young woman walked into the cafe, holding a photo. She looked lost, nervous. Her clothes were worn, her hands shaky. "Have you seen this man?" she asked Lily at the counter. "He's my father. He left years ago, I think. I think he might have come here." Lily looked at the photo. It wasn't Keanu. It was someone else. She gently shook her head. "I'm sorry, I haven't." The woman nodded sadly and turned to leave. But the man at table 7 stood up. He walked to the woman, looked at the photo, then softly took out a pen and a napkin. He wrote an address, folded it, handed it to her. "Do you know him?" she asked. He smiled, then placed a hand on his heart and walked back to his seat. She looked at the address, then looked at him. "Thank you," she whispered. Keanu nodded once. She left hopeful, and everyone in the cafe watched in silence. Lily stood behind the counter, shaken. Not from drama, not from shock, but from something deeper, kindness, in a city of noise. Someone had chosen to speak through action. It was louder than any words could ever be. The The rain poured harder outside, but table 7 stayed calm, and the man with the quiet smile lifted his cup. That day, something changed in Lily, in the café, and everyone who watched because, for the first time, they truly understood something simple. You don't need to speak to be heard. You just have to care and act. A note on the napkin. Morning after the rainstorm, the sky was clear. Sunlight touched every corner of the small cafe. The windows glowed softly, and the streets outside were quiet except for the hum of early buses and the echo of footsteps. On wet pavement, Keanu Reeves came in at the same time as always. He nodded at Lily, who smiled without saying a word. She had stopped asking him questions by now. Instead, she brought his usual black coffee and placed it on the table gently, almost like she was offering something sacred. "Thank you," she whispered, not expecting a reply. He nodded once, as always, but something was different that morning. Lily noticed it before she could explain it. The way his eyes looked a little heavier, not tired, no, deeper, like something was sitting quietly behind them, a thought that weighed more than words could carry. A few minutes passed, and a girl walked into the cafe. She was maybe 19 or 20. She looked nervous, holding a book pressed tightly to her chest. She scanned the room, paused, and then slowly approached table 7. Excuse me," she said quietly. Keanu looked up, calm and steady. I just wanted to say thank you," she said. "You probably don't remember me, but 3 years ago, I was sitting in a park alone, crying. You were filming nearby. You gave me a sandwich." The cafe went quiet again. "I was homeless then," she continued, "and no one looked at me. But you did. You didn't say anything. You just gave me food and sat near me for a minute. I never forgot that." She opened the book. Inside was a small photo worn around the edges. Her, sitting on a bench. Keanu in the background, looking away, hands in his pockets. "I kept this picture," she said, "because that day, I decided to change. I got clean, got help, and now I'm starting college." Keanu stood slowly. The girl's hands trembled, but he didn't speak. Instead, he reached for a napkin, took out a pen, and wrote one word: proud. He folded the napkin and handed it to her with a small smile. Her eyes filled with tears. She hugged him gently. He let her. Then she walked out, holding the napkin like it was made of gold. No applause. No cameras. Just truth. Lily stood frozen behind the counter, her chest tight with emotion. After that, customers began coming in with stories. An old man remembered Keanu, helping his wife up when she slipped near a film set. A young barista once saw him fix a broken bike chain for a child without saying a word. A middle-aged woman swore he once paid for her groceries when she was short on cash, then disappeared before she could say thank you. And every time someone told their story, Keanu just nodded, almost like he was embarrassed by the attention. He never denied it, never explained himself. He just listened and smiled quietly. But the cafe began to change, eh? Man in a suit helped an elderly woman to her seat. A teenage boy cleaned up someone else's spilled drink. A woman left a handwritten poem on the table just because they weren't doing it for likes or views. They were doing it because they saw it modeled by someone who never asked for anything in return. Lily watched it all unfold, and she started keeping the napkins, the ones Keanu left behind with small words scribbled on them: hope, peace, listen, forgive. They became part of the cafe's wall, not decoration, reminders, messages, written without shouting, messages that moved people more than speeches ever could. One afternoon, a man in a leather jacket came in. He looked angry, sharp, like someone who had been through too much too fast. His eyes darted around the room, searching for something he wasn't sure existed. He saw Keanu, walked straight to him. "You don't know me," he said, "but my brother, he died last year, overdose. You visited him once. At rehab, gave him a letter. He never told anyone what was in it, just said it mattered." Keanu looked at him. Quiet. "I found it after he passed," the man said. "It said you matter more than your worst day." he choked up. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for seeing him when no one else did." Keanu stood, placed a hand gently on the man's shoulder. No words, just presence. And somehow, that was enough. Lily watched from behind the counter, heart full. She realized something important. Kindness doesn't have to be loud. Some people give speeches. Others start foundations. Keanu Reeves gave silence and filled it with care. The world outside, it's spinning. People hurried by the cafe, unaware. But inside, something real was happening. A quiet revolution, one act at a time. The jar of folded wishes cafe had slowly become something else. Not just a place for coffee, not just a stop on the way to work. It became a kind of quiet sanctuary, where people showed up not for caffeine, but for something more important. For stillness. For meaning. For connection. And always, in the far corner, sat Keanu Reeves. At table 7, a man of few words, but a heart that never stayed hidden. One crisp autumn morning, Lily came in early to prepare the shop. She unlocked the door, wiped down the counters, and turned on the lights. The sun had barely risen. The streets outside were silent as she cleaned table 7. Something caught her eye. It was a glass jar, small, round, and placed carefully in the center of the table. Inside it were dozens of tiny folded papers. There was no note, no label, no instructions, just the jar. When Keanu came in later, Lily walked over and asked gently, "Did you leave the jar?" He gave his usual small smile and nodded once. "What is it?" she asked. He pointed to a pen, then to the jar. "For people to write something?" she guessed. He nodded again. So, that's what they did by the end of the day. The jar was already halfway full. Some people wrote thank you notes to strangers. Some wrote dreams they had forgotten. Others wrote names of loved ones they missed. A girl wrote, "I'm scared to start over." A man wrote, "Today I didn't give up." A child wrote, "I hope my mom smiles tomorrow." The jar became a quiet mirror for the hearts of the people who walked in. Keanu never opened it. He never read a single one. But every morning, he would straighten the jar gently, like it mattered. Like every folded note inside was sacred. One day a group of teenagers came in. They were loud at first, full of energy and jokes. One of them, a boy with dark eyes and bruised knuckles, saw the jar and scoffed. "This some kind of therapy thing," said. Keanu looked at him, not angry, just calm. He handed the boy a pen and a napkin. "What? You want me to write something?" the boy asked, smirking. Keanu didn't answer. Didn't need to. The boy rolled his eyes, but after a moment, he sat down. He started writing. His friends watched, confused. When he was done, he folded the napkin and placed it in the jar. Later, when they left, Lily saw the boy pause at the door. He turned to look at Keanu, then nodded. It was small, but it meant everything. Another day a woman came in with a baby in her arms. She looked exhausted, her hair messy, her eyes tired. She barely spoke. She just held the baby close and ordered tea. Keanu watched her. When she sat down, he wrote something on a napkin and quietly placed it on her table before walking away. The woman opened it slowly. It said, "You're doing better than you think." She covered her mouth and began to cry. Not loud tears. Quiet ones. The kind that come from being seen. The kind that matter most. And as the weeks passed, the jar kept filling. So Lily put out a second jar. Then a third. They didn't throw any notes away. Instead, they started pinning them to a wall soon. One whole side of the cafe was covered in folded hope. They called it the Wall of Whispers. People began traveling just to see it. Not because it was famous, but because it felt honest, true, real. One day, a man in a wheelchair rolled into the cafe. He had a book in his lap and soft eyes. He looked around, saw the jar, saw the wall, and asked Lily, "What is all this?" She smiled. "Just kindness." He nodded. "We need more of that." He wheeled over to table 7. "May I sit?" He asked Keanu. Keanu nodded and moved his chair to make space. They sat together for over an hour. No one knows what they talked about, or if they even spoke. But when the man left, he left behind a folded napkin. Lily unfolded it later. It read, "Today I felt human again. That night after. Everyone had gone, and the chairs were stacked. Lily sat at table 7. Keanu was gone, as always, just before closing. She looked at the jar, at the wall, and then at her own reflection in the window. She had changed. Everyone had. The cafe had become more than a business. It had become a place of gentle truth, and it all started with a man who chose to listen more than speak. A man who reminded the world that silence, when filled with love, becomes something louder than words. The winter of Quiet Heart's winter came early that year. The first snow fell like a whisper, soft and steady, covering the city in white. The cafe looked different under the snow, quieter, softer, like the world had taken a deep breath and decided to pause. Inside, the warmth from the lights made the windows foggy. People came in shaking snow off their coats, stomping their boots dry on the mat by the door. And in the far corner, table 7 waited. Keanu Reeves was already there, sipping his black coffee. The jar of folded wishes was full again. Lily had added a fourth one just the week before. The wall of whispers now stretched across the entire back of the cafe. People stood in front of it daily, reading the notes slowly, sometimes smiling, sometimes crying, sometimes just closing their eyes and breathing. The cafe had become a place where people came to feel less alone. One morning, a young man entered, carrying a violin case. His face was pale from the cold, but his eyes burned with something deeper. Sadness, maybe, or anger. It was hard to tell. He sat quietly near table 7 and didn't order anything. He just sat. Keanu watched him for a while, then stood and walked to him. He didn't speak, just placed a small piece of folded paper on the table and returned to his seat. The young man opened it. It said, "Play something." His hands trembled. He looked around, unsure. "Here," Keanu nodded. Lily gave a soft smile from behind the counter. "Go ahead." So the man opened his violin case. Slowly, carefully, he tuned the strings, then lifted the instrument to his shoulder and began to play. The music was haunting and beautiful, soft like snow falling on quiet streets. The entire cafe stilled. No one moved. No one spoke. They just listened. Tears slipped down Lily's cheek before she even knew they had started. When he finished, the man held the violin tightly and said, "I haven't played in front of people since my dad died. He taught me everything." I stopped. After the funeral, I thought I was done. He looked at Keanu, voice shaking. "Thank you." Keanu nodded. His eyes, full of quiet strength, said everything from that day on. The violinist came every Friday to play a short set. He never charged, just played. And slowly, others began to offer small parts of themselves too. A woman brought in fresh flowers once a week and left them on random tables. A college student started leaving free books with notes inside them that said, "This helped me. Maybe it'll help you too." A single mother who once came in crying now volunteered every Sunday to wipe tables and fill sugar jars. And Keanu remained, like the center of it all. Not the leader, not the hero, just the example. The stillness in a world too loud. One evening, as a blizzard rolled in, the cafe lights flickered. The power went out for a few seconds, then returned. The heater gave a soft hiss and fell silent. Everyone paused. "We'll get it fixed," Lily said gently, lighting candles. Keanu stood and walked to the back room. Without asking, he found the breaker and turned the heat back on. He didn't speak, didn't explain. He just did what needed to be done. The cafe stayed warm through the storm outside. The city slowed to a stop. Inside, they shared candles, warm muffins, and quiet laughter. People read old notes from the wall aloud, and for a moment, no one cared about their phones, their emails, or the rush of the outside world. They were just there together, a soft snow family built by kindness. Later that night, When everyone had gone, Lily sat down at table 7 again. Keanu was still there, sipping the last of his coffee. "Do you ever wonder if it's enough?" she asked softly. "Just being kind." Keanu didn't answer. Instead, reached into his coat pocket and placed something on the table. A small, folded note. Lily opened it. "Being kind is never small." She smiled, tears in her eyes, and nodded, because deep down she already knew. And as the snow continued to fall outside, the cafe glowed quietly, lit by candles. Filled with peace. All thanks to one man who never raised his voice, who never asked for praise, who just showed up again and again. Echoes of a good butte. Snow melted slowly that year. Winter clung to the edges of the city like a guest who didn't want to leave. But inside the cafe, the mood began to shift. The regulars still came. The wall of whispers kept growing. The jars of folded napkins were emptied and replaced. People still played music, left books, wrote poems, and shared silent kindness. But something was different. Keanu wasn't at table 7 that morning. Lily noticed it right away. The air felt still, like the song had paused halfway. She waited a few minutes, then checked the street. No sign of him. Maybe he was late. But hours passed and he never came. The next day the same. A week passed. Regulars whispered among themselves. Maybe he's traveling. Maybe he's filming again. Maybe he's just taking time off. But no one really knew. Lily didn't say much. She just stared at table 7 each morning and placed a fresh cup of black coffee there, just in case. No. I sat in his chair. They couldn't. It wasn't fear or respect. It was something deeper. It felt like sitting in a quiet prayer. Then one morning, a letter arrived. Handwritten, no stamp. Just left at the front counter before opening hours, the envelope said. To Lily and everyone at the cafe. Her hands trembled. As she opened it, the letter read, "Dear friends, I never planned to stay forever. I came because I needed silence, not the kind that hides pain, the kind that listens to it. The kind that helps it heal. You gave me that. You gave me more than I can't explain. I wanted to leave something behind, but now I realize I don't need to. You've already created something that lives without me. Keep listening. Keep showing up for each other. And remember, kindness is a seed. It grows, even when you're not watching." With gratitude, Cleely read it aloud to the cafe that morning. Some cried. Some smiled. Some sat in silence, holding their coffee like it was a memory. And still, no one sat at table 7. A few days later, a woman came in with a young boy. She was nervous, holding his hand tightly. They stood in front of the wall of whispers for a long time. Finally, she approached Lily. "My son. He's been having a hard time. We lost his dad last year. Someone told me this place might help." Lily knelt down and smiled at the boy. "Would you like to write something for the jar?" He nodded slowly. She gave him a pen and a napkin. He thought for a moment, then wrote, "I miss you. But I'm trying to be brave." He folded it, placed it in the jar, then looked over at table 7. "Can I sit there?" he asked quietly. Lily hesitated, then nodded. "Double quotes, yes," she said. "I think he'd want that." The boy sat at the table and smiled. Just a little. And it felt right. After that, others began to sit there too. Not every day, not carelessly, but when someone needed it. When someone needed to feel strong in silence. The chair at table 7 became a quiet comfort. A reminder of someone who had given without asking, who had helped without words. And slowly, life moved forward. The violinist kept playing. The jars kept filling. The wall of whispers grew. But now, they added something new. A small wooden sign carved by hand. Placed gently above table 7. It said, "He never spoke loudly, but the world heard him anyway," and beneath it, people began placing their own folded notes. Not for the wall, not for each other, but for the man who showed them how to care in silence. "You helped me find hope." I'll never forget what you did. Thank you for seeing me. Keanu Reeves never returned, but his kindness remained not in statues, not in headlines, but in every quiet act that followed. The man who planted Lightspring arrived like a soft song. Birds returned to the trees outside the cafe. Flowers bloomed on windowsills. The air carried warmth again. People walked slower, smiled more. Inside the cafe, everything had changed. Somehow stayed the same. Table 7 still stood quietly in the corner, a symbol of stillness in a rushing world. The jars were now 6 in number, lined neatly on a shelf, each filled with folded napkins, silent voices that whispered love, pain, healing, and hope. The wall of whispers covered nearly every inch of space. People came from other cities even. Other countries just to see it. Some came alone, some with family. All left changed. One morning a group of children came in with their teacher. They were small, full of curiosity, eyes wide at the glowing notes and candlelight. Who sat there? One girl asked, pointing to table 7. Lily stepped from behind the counter. Kneeling beside her, someone kind, she said. Someone who listened. Did he own this place? Lily smiled softly. No, just loved it like it mattered. The girl nodded and stared at the empty chair for a while. Then she pulled a crayon from her backpack and scribbled something on a napkin. I want to be like him. She folded it and placed it in the jar, and the cafe stayed quiet a moment longer than usual, as if the walls themselves paused to feel it. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. A filmmaker who had once met Keanu, during a charity project, entered the cafe with a small crew. No big cameras, no lights, just curiosity. He asked Lily gently. We're making a short film about moments that changed lives. We heard stories about this place, about him. Lily didn't answer right away. She simply led them to the wall. Let them read. When they were done, none of them spoke for several minutes. One of them finally whispered, "This is more than a cafe," the filmmaker asked. "Can we record a little?" No interviews, just the wall, the jars. Maybe some of the music. Lily thought of Keanu. He never wanted attention. But he also never said to hide the truth. And this story wasn't his alone. Anymore, it belonged to everyone who left a note. Everyone who healed here. Everyone who learned how to listen without shouting. So she nodded the film. A simple 10-minute piece titled "The Man Who Didn't Need Words" went viral within days. Not because of drama, not because of fame, but because of truth, a quiet kind of truth. The cafe was flooded with letters. Messages from people who had never even visited. Your story reminded me to call my father. I forgave someone after 10 years. I stopped and helped a stranger today. One letter arrived from a woman in Greece. It said, I was about to give up. Then, I read about table 7. Now I'm trying again. Lily read every message. She placed many of them in a new jar. They called it the ripple. Jar because that's what kindness does. It moves through people like waves. Gentle, strong, endless, in Keanu. No one heard from him, but one night, long after closing, Lily locked the door, turned off the lights, and stood in front of table 7. The moonlight lit the chair softly on the table, sat afresh. Black coffee, and beside it a single napkin. Neatly, folded, her heart raced. She walked to the table slowly, unfolded it, and read, You kept it alive. Thank you. No signature, no sound. Just that. She looked outside into the quiet. Street, no one there. But she smiled anyway, because sometimes you don't need to see someone to feel them sometimes. It's the love they left behind is enough to carry you forward. Years passed, the cafe grew. The wall of whispers became part of the city's heart. The table remained always open for anyone who needed to remember how powerful it is to simply be kind. And sometimes when things got too loud in the world, people came in, sat down at table 7, and remembered a man who didn't say much, but changed everything with one quiet action at a time.